Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 9 of HPConnects. I'm Anastasia Barnes. I'm really excited to have Kyle Reagan of DECCO Inc. With us today. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Anastasia. How are you?
Very excited, very excited. Those of you that are joining, we'll be discussing challenging your company's core values and making decisions during a crisis. And Kyle, I'm excited to have you on, and I'm going to, as if I had a microphone, give you the microphone.
Great. I appreciate it, Anastasia. I hope I can lend something to the conversation here. I've been involved in some of the high-profile webinars up to this point, so hopefully I can meet the standard that's already been set. Great. So the topic of kind of core values in practice is certainly a timely one. As we've seen, everybody's been impacted by something that none of us could have anticipated or prepared for. And when it first took hold, we all looked around for guidance and advice, and we looked outside of our companies, we looked inside of our companies. At DECCO, we certainly looked inside, and we started to make some critical decisions. And those decisions were happening in 15-minute windows. We actually pulled the senior management team together, and we said the decisions we're making at 9 a.m. may not be relevant by 9:15 because things were so fluid. So we looked at a ton of things, as everybody did, that was getting thrown at them. And we always referred back to the core values that we had come up with and established. And I know a lot of companies have core values. I know, some people use them as a plaque in their reception area. But as I kind of worked through this with the management team here, we really put them to test. And the decisions being made were being made that had to align with those core values. And if they didn't, we moved on to something else because it wasn't the right decision. So as we kind of move past the shock and awe phase of this coronavirus thing, we move into what seems like a new normal. It's kind of the perfect time to look at how some companies reacted. We've seen some good. Unfortunately, we've seen some bad in the marketplace. But my experience in talking to other owners of companies is the ones that have come through this better than others did so because they were tied to some key core values that employees could count on and rely on, and that ownership knew as long as they were sticking towards those core values, they were making decisions in the best interest of the organization and the employees. So I want to start with this quote from Dave Logan. It's a great book called Tribal Leadership, because he gets right to values. And it says, the CEO is not in charge of the company, the values are. So we certainly saw that. And I think a lot of people have. I know in talking to fellow owners, there was things that were sort of tackled in the last few months here that, as I mentioned earlier, were never, ever anticipated. We actually had an annual business meeting in late February, and we talked about the great year that was ahead of us, the year that we had just completed, and shamefully did not make one mention to a pandemic that could potentially hit the economy. So it was not something we were anticipating. Goes without saying. So let's dive into core values a little bit. I think as we look at different data and stats, one of the things I pulled together here is from the Gallup data, which talks about core values that are just hanging in a reception area, and they're not integral to a company's operating procedures. So, it mentions here employees who believe in the company's core values is 20%, and employees who say they can apply the company's core values to their jobs is only 23%. I want to relate this to something we do at DECCO. Is we do an annual partner opinion poll where we ask 50 questions to everybody in the company. As I said, it gets administered annually. And what those 50 questions do is they compile themselves into 6 categories. The categories are belonging, career development, communication, fair treatment, quality, and security. In those 6 categories, questions within are the measurements that we want to use to know how we're doing and are we being true to our core values. So there's actually 2 specific questions within the opinion poll. The first is, I understand the core values and the mission statement of the company. We've received a 94% positive rating on that the people that work at DECCO and choose a career at DECCO, they know and understand our core values, and they see it every day in practice. And not only do they personally understand why those core values are important to how they operate and how they could be successful here at DECCO, but the people around them, the second question, the people I work with live up to our core values. There we received a 96% approval rating. So those are two key metrics for us to understand how we're doing as it relates to core values. To us, it's never been about just having a plaque in our reception area. It's always been about, these are things integral and important to the company. So every decision we make has to be in alignment with those core values. So we use a 4-quadrant system, which is not something we created. Obviously, it's something that's used by a lot of people, but that 4-quadrant system you see is, you are always looking for quadrant 1 partners. So quadrant 1 are those that share your company's values and your vision, and they're strong performers. Quadrant 2 are those that share your company vision and the values, but they might be weaker performers or in need of development. Quadrant 3 is a very difficult group, because those are the people that are very strong, competent performers, but they do not share your company core values and vision. Quadrant 4 is probably the easiest group to move through a company, because they're not very strong performers, and they also don't share the company's vision or values. We like to say they get it or they don't get it. Get it means they get the vision and the values, and if they don't get it, they do not share those visions or those values. So talking a bit about core values, there's some quotes that are placed through here that I've always liked. One from Roy Disney. I'm sure people know who that is. It's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. So building to the point of the decisions that were required during this coronavirus thing and how we apply these core values is so critical. And it's really such a validation for us as an organization that, kind of what we've done is what had to be done. And we did it for the right reasons. So as we started to establish our core values, and I think if companies that are out there do not have recognized core values, at least posted, that they're guiding their business by, there's some words of advice here. It requires a lot of introspection. It requires, what are we now as an organization? What sort of decisions do we make currently, and why do we make those decisions? It requires a lot of assessment as to, what are the decision points now, and who has the authority to make those decisions and impact those changes. And lastly, there's a lot of aspirations. What do you want to be? What do you aspire to be as you work through these core values? If you have a vision for the company in the future, you want to make sure those core values are aligned with that aspiration. And it's also important to understand that there's no right or wrong answer as you work through these things. Companies aspire to be different things to different people. And largely the leadership of that company is going to take cues from what those core values are, and that the employees understand that their actions and their behaviors are either in line with those core values or they're not. At DECCO, we recognize the people that are most successful with us, those quadrant 1 performers that really get it, they are directly in line with those core values, and not on a corporate level, on a very personal level. So I think if they're faking it, that comes through. So it needs to be authentic and real, because ultimately employees want to know what's expected of them, right? They want to know that the evaluation that they're going to fall under, whether it's an annual performance review or even if they're going to have a job within an organization, they want to know what are sort of the guidelines and what are the rules here, and what's the expectation of me, not only on goals as it relates to performance goals on an annual basis, but just on interactions and how you treat people and how you behave in stressful situations and positive situations. So
I'm going to just interject there. Looks like we have a question for you. For the employee partner poll, how else do you utilize the results for support, I should say, to support the culture of commitment to the core values? And does it help you as a leader to drive conversations and engagement around ensuring the core values remain actionable?
It does, yeah. We actually have an opinion poll committee that takes that. It's made of the senior management team. We gather that information. We do it in two parts. We actually have an objective piece, which I talked about. There's 50 questions that people complete a questionnaire. But we also have a subjective piece where we bring in a third-party person, somebody we worked well with in the past. And they go around, they have relationships with people within the company, so people are comfortable with them. They go around, they interview people as requested. So if people want to expand beyond the objective part and add a subjective part, they're able to do that. It's anonymous, so they can share the information. We want to make sure it wasn't, polluted by, I better answer this well, or I'm going to be in trouble.
Right.
So it is anonymous. And it was interesting, this year we did the subjective part, and Jim Allen is the gentleman that helped us out, and he came back, and I was sitting with him, we're going over some of the subjective feedback we had gotten, and he said, yeah, I was talking to Jim, partner A, and he said, it really, really great if this company had a workwear allowance that, because we go through boots and jeans and work clothes so much, if they just had a workwear allowance. And Jim looked at me and he said, I thought you had a workwear allowance. And I said, we do have a workwear allowance. So, it brought to mind one of those points of the 6 categories I've talked about is communication. Is we need to do better there because we're clearly not communicating the benefit package we have if people are asking those questions. So that's what happens. So we bring that committee together. We gather the results. We look at the results. We share it at the annual business meeting against previous year's performances. We'll go back as 3 years previously. We'll show those results. And we want each one trending up, obviously. We don't want to be losing ground. And it's a great marker for us to understand how we're doing on a base level. I tell people we do an annual performance review where I'll sit with our partner development manager and myself, and we do performance reviews for every single person in the company. And we tell them, this is your chance to do our review sitting here. So we get what we think is unadulterated, unfiltered sort of feedback. It's open and it's honest, and we score well. So that's how the process works. So hopefully I answered that question well enough.
Thank you.
So to jump back, I started talking about how employees behave and interact, and not only amongst themselves, even with clients and outside of the company, vendors, all the above. It's so critical to the culture within a company. So we look at those decisions and how they're made, whether it's a project team making a decision, it's estimators making a decision, it's finance, it's accounts payable, it's receivables, it's all those things. And so I mentioned whether it's in the boardroom, the break room, the job trailer, anywhere in between. Ultimately we want to make sure that people are interacting that in ways that are consistent with our core values. So, I like to touch on a couple leadership icons. And these are going to be names. Well, there'll be one name people don't recognize, but these are going to be names of people that everybody knows. So some of their quotes that are my favorites is leadership is not something you do to people. It's something you do with people. That's Ken Blanchard. Everybody knows who Ken Blanchard is. Another is values are internal and subjective and represent that which we feel strongest about in guiding our behavior. Goes back to and really stresses my points from earlier. And that's Stephen Covey. Covey 7 Habits is something we train all of our people in terms of personal development. It really has no application to us on a corporate level. It's not a requirement to be a leader at DECCO to administer the Covey 7 Habits, but we present it and we open it up as an opportunity for all of our people to use and implement the 7 habits as they apply for themselves, their family, certainly their work life as well. But as I said, it's one of the most impactful training tools we use. So to jump into DECCO core values, we've got 4 of them, and we're about to have 5 because this recent experience has brought to light a fifth one. But we got four of them. Partnership, we trust and respect each other. So our employees are our partners. I'm not going to read this slide. They kind of stand alone. We truly view the people that choose a career at DECCO as a huge responsibility on our end, because there's the ability to earn somebody's trust, not only that partner, but the partner and their family, to trust their career with a company is huge, and we don't minimize that. From our boot camp pre-apprentice people that come in, all the way through our licensed journey people, all the way up into senior leadership. People that have chosen a career at DECCO, it's a huge responsibility for us to keep them challenged, keep them engaged, and ultimately get to what they would view as a rewarding career, and they get the Rolex at the end of the ride. So not everybody gets Rolexes. It's just a figure of speech. In addition to that, we want to make sure our clients are viewed as partners. Clients they're obviously our lifeblood. So we need them. We do not like to live in a world of competition where we're competing for low numbers and clients feel like they've got to get all their ducks in a row to make sure they keep us in a row and we keep them honest and they keep us honest. That's not the sort of contracting world we live in. You'll see a lot of these core values feed to that. Excellence, we take pride in our work. We're proud of the fact that we're one of the most awarded federally approved apprentice programs in America. Last year's gold medal winner, Sean O'Dowd from the Associated Builders and Contractors National Craft Olympics, got his license within a year, got his license, won the gold medal in the National Olympics, got his license, and then most recently moved into a career in piping design here. So we don't generally like to move our best pipe fitters out of the field and into office jobs, but Sean had a real desire to do that with his career, and we had the opportunity. So he's done well, and that really speaks to the fact that we're trying to provide careers for people, not just jobs. And because in construction, it gets such a bad reputation as a hire, fire, hire, layoff, hire for a job when the job's over, everybody goes away. That's not what DECCO's about, and our core values show that as well. So it leads right into commitments. We honor our commitments. Our words are bonds. We hold everybody to this accountable in the office, and it's gotten to the point where we have fun with it. People ask when they say, "Yeah, I'll get that done by Tuesday." We will call them out and say, "Is that a commitment?" And when people know if they make that commitment to have something by Tuesday, it's an important part of what we do, because everybody's busy. Everybody has a role to play, and commitment is such a lost art when it comes to contracting that we recognize the fact we meet our commitments is a huge part of why we consider ourselves one of the premier contractors in New England. And lastly is ethics. I think right along with contracting, as I mentioned earlier, is we're going to treat people with honesty and integrity. We expect the same in return. We're not proud of the fact, but we do promote the fact that we have had to fire clients where that doesn't work, where they treat us somewhere outside of those lines. And it's been some difficult decisions over the years, but we've never regretted those, because I think any relationship, whether it's a client and contractor relationship, or it's an employee boss relationship, if it's not founded in these bedrock principles, it's not going to work. So those are the four key ones. The last one for us is servant leadership, which is under consideration and just about in agreement now that it's going to be added. But these are the four we live by. So, we took these four and we really put these to test during the coronavirus thing. So I want to go to one more leadership icon that had the famous quote, "When the going gets tough, the tough get going." I don't think many people know who that is. That picture's clearly from the 70s. That was my father. So he instilled that in my brothers and I from a very young age. And it's funny, as I get older and older, I'm 50 now, and as I work through, daily interactions here, that one expression, he's had a lot of them over the time, but That one expression has stuck with me more than the others as I look at a daily kind of work grind. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I thought of that when early in March, when coronavirus was first hitting. You know, we, as I mentioned earlier, we saw a lot of companies react differently. And you know, I talked to the senior management team, and I actually used this quote, and I said, you know, it's easy to do this. It's easier to do this. It's never easy, but it's easier to do this when things are good and things are, you know, everything's rolling. We've got work, and you know, this is the real challenge of leadership in an organization, and it's a real challenge to everybody throughout the organization, because how do you respond when the going gets tough? So I wanted to share with people kind of how we applied these 4 core values and why ultimately it led to the decision we're going to add a 5th, which is servant leadership. But you know, I talked about partnership earlier, and the things that we did in response to coronavirus. I mean, one of the first things I recognized in getting out into the field and talking to the field-based partners was the financial scare that happened with everything. As the economy was shutting down, people were scared, people were confused. Just the uncertainty that painted everybody was very intimidating. So the palpable, you know, kind of feeling on every job site was, what's next? What is going to happen? And it certainly didn't reassure people when I said, you know, we're making decisions in 15-minute intervals. That didn't calm many fears. But I only shared that because it was really based around, we don't know what's next. Nobody did. So if President Trump doesn't know what's next, Kyle Reagan is not going to know what's next. So as we reverted back to what we were going to do and how we ultimately got through it as a team from everybody in the company, is the first thing was we were going to guarantee them 40 hours a week, because we needed to put to ease their mind of, do I have a job? And can I make my mortgage payment? And those sort of critical things. So we guaranteed them you were going to get a full paycheck. If you're impacted by coronavirus and the school started to shut down and daycare shut down, people didn't know if they could get to work. So we guaranteed them, even if you couldn't in this time, until everybody knows what's going on, we're going to guarantee a 40-hour work week. That quickly sort of evolved into, yeah, but I don't want to work that many hours because I want to be with my family and I want to make sure, you know, they're safe. And, you know, there was 1,000 different situations where it all made perfect sense. And I know, meeting with one of our larger job sites, they said, we really appreciate the fact that we have a job, that we have someplace to go during the day. But, you know, I get here at work and I don't know what's going on at home. My kids are home. I don't have coverage, you know, daycare coverage. School's out, or my wife's not working, or my husband has to, you know, he's working a night shift. So there was so much turbulence. So then we went from the guaranteed 40 to a 32 for 40. This is about 2 weeks after the guaranteed 40. We went to a 32 for 40 work week, where I met with every one of our clients and I said, we cannot have people on job sites 5 days a week, even 6 days a week, or even 7 days a week. We eliminated overtime, saying, we're not going to expose our people to overtime hours. It's not fair to them. That was mostly popular. Some guys wanted the overtime, but it was mostly popular. And I said, we're going to go a step further. Our crews are only going to work 4 8-hour days. They're only going to work 32-hour weeks. We're going to pay them for 40 hours a week, but they're only going to work 32-hour weeks, 4 days a week, so they could have 3-day weekends. They can get home about 2:30, 3:30, depending on the start time, every day. So they were at home more than they were at work. And that was important to them. It was important to us. Our clients appreciated the fact that they knew we weren't going away, but that we were going to get people on the job site, that were going to do their job, and they were going to get home. Second, I guess the third point was, we also decided, with the daycares closing and schools shutting down, the lack of daycare was a big problem. So in order to address some of that stuff, we moved every project that we could to second shift. So we were working starting around 1 o'clock, most of our jobs, not all of them, most of them, just to accommodate and be as accommodating as possible to everybody that had those concerns. And then the challenge was getting the right people onto those job sites that needed that second shift, work shift for their personal reasons. In Brookline, we had set up the remote work networks so people could work from home. Probably everybody did that as well. We've seen a lot of positives with that. And we're just talking about it now, saying, I'm not sure I see a time where we're ever all back in Brookline full time, where our offices are, because there's some real positive effects to people working remotely, from lack of traffic to quality time at home. Every company deals with blending the work life and the personal life. I think this is something that's going to remain, and we'll kind of work through that. Back to the first point about people worried about their paycheck. During this time, we increased everybody's pay 25% across the board. The purpose of that is just, to work in this environment during this time. There's so much turbulence and so much going on. We wanted people to not only be assured they had a full work week, but also that they were going to get a premium to work during this time. It was our goal. It was our mission. It was my directive to the senior management team that we're going to keep this work open and we're going to keep working during this time, but we're not putting anybody at risk beyond what the CDC or the HWO is advising as to how to work safely in this environment. So there was a lot of challenges as it relates to all those. In order to do that in a construction world in congested spaces, there was a lot of challenges that we had some great ideas come up that we're still employing now. And as I said, I'm not sure we're ever going to get away from that. So, and lastly, in partnership, we did recognize the fact that we had, partners that were going through a lot. And we looked one step further and said, it's not just the partners, it's the partners, it's their families, it's their children, it's everybody now is really concerned about what's going on. So whether they were sending their husband or wife off to work at DECCO, or whatever the situation was, we wanted to make sure we reached out, and we opened up the coronavirus hotline email to everybody, where they had a direct line to the senior management team to send in email questions, comments, concerns that would get addressed in a timely manner, because I was afraid of emails flying around to different people and different responses coming out about the company's position. In order to kind of corral all of that stuff and make sure there was a single sort of voice that was giving consistent answers as to what the response was going to be, we set up the coronavirus email hotline. And it's funny, we didn't get much response from the partners, but we got a bunch of response from family members saying thank you for the fact that we finally had somebody we could talk to ask questions to. So it was a challenge, because you're dealing with questions, as I said earlier, you never would have anticipated. It was a challenge, but it was something that was very much appreciated. So excellence. One of the other things we had done during this is we set up pretty quickly, and I would be lying and in violation of our core values if I said we had this on the shelf. We did not, but we set up, within a week, we created the Field Leadership Control Manual for an infectious disease outbreak. And we applied it directly to coronavirus, obviously. And it set up the guidelines for our job site policies, HR policies, how they apply, because our site leaders were getting questions and comments as well. And they were as well trying to field and answer as many questions as they could on the fly. And this was effective not only for our people, it was equally effective for our, whether it was the CMs, GCs, or the owners that we were working for on these job sites, because they wanted to know, what were you guys doing? What is DECCO doing to make sure you're keeping people safe? So this field leadership manual became integral to everything we do. And there's elements of this that may never go away in terms of how they get applied. So Anastasia, I'm happy to share that with people if they would like to see what that looks like.
Great.
That's something I'm happy to share, because I do think it's a great tool. I do know some of our CM clients, they asked if they could borrow it, quote unquote, and they reissued it in a similar format, but with their own logos on it. So also, as applies to excellence, we invested heavily in training. for a couple of reasons. One is we believe in training and development as a merit shop contractor. You know, we're offering careers and career opportunities and the opportunity for people to develop and learn new skills and maximize those skills and advance in their career. It's integral to what we do. But it also helped that we could get people off of quote unquote dirty construction job sites, and we put them into our craft training center, which is down in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. And we offered 2-day training, 16 hours that we cycled every single person in the company through it during this outbreak. We were able to maintain social distancing, all the requirements of the CDC. And we taught things like the Covey 7 habits. We taught things like estimating and cost control. And we had welding labs and pipe fitting labs. So we did a lot of practical training as well. For, no matter where you were in your career or what sort of skills you wanted to sort of try or perfect, you had the opportunity within DECCO University. So that's been a big boost for us. As I said, we do it every year, and having the craft training center in Chelmsford is great for us. It helps be our apprenticeship program, but it also is true to our word as a merit shop contractor that we invest heavily in training, and those opportunities are there for people that want to take them. Commitments. We honor our commitments. I talked earlier about how important that is to what DECCO is all about in our relationships with our owners and our clients. So as I mentioned earlier, we moved the project to second shift. That caused a lot of concern from CMs saying, well, what does this mean? And we need additional overhead and additional supervision. But we told them when we took the job, we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done on their schedule. The best, most safe way for us to get this done in a less congested area is to work on a second shift. So we made a lot of concessions, but we ultimately met our commitment on every project schedule we had that was still operating. I talked about the field leadership manual. That was an important part of what we had done with our field leadership, because they certainly felt like they were the tip of the spear for good reason. They are. And they were thankful that they had sort of a rule book. So when they were interacting with, whether it was owners, vendors, subcontractors, delivery trucks, all the above, they knew they had the ability to control with the most current information that job site so that they could keep people safe. And obviously we provided all the PPEs needed. Everybody's done that: face mask, the hand sanitizer, and doing the deep clean sanitizations of our job sites and all of our work tools. I mentioned the craft training center. It's also where we maintain our logistics center, where all of our tools and equipment is stored and mobilized. Job sites are mobilized from there. So we did a deep clean of all of our tools, all the workspaces. So we do that. We were doing it every 2 weeks. Now we're doing it on a monthly basis. And that's been effective for us. Lastly is ethics, honesty, and integrity. I'll talk about some of the things we've already talked about. But 2 things in particular: the employee reference guide, in addition to the leadership manual, which was established specifically for our field leadership and our site crews. We also established and released the employee reference guide. You can see the table of contents as it's there, sort of the topics that were included. And to be completely honest, this started with about 4 or 5 different items. You can see number 1, which is, you look back now, it's almost funny, is what is COVID-19? Because in early March, nobody knew the difference between coronavirus and COVID-19. So it talks about that, and it worked its way all the way down through. You can see that the DECCO confirmed suspected COVID quarantine decision matrix. What happens if you think somebody might be infected? So that was a flow chart that was helpful for people. I'm thankful everybody is. We haven't had any positive cases, knock on wood, but it's a helpful guide. And again, Anastasia, I'd make this available for people if they wanted it. Happy to share it. It's not proprietary information. It's good information that went out to all of our people and their families. So I mentioned the email hotline that we had set up as we distributed this coronavirus reference guide, and the questions we had gotten back from families as it relates to this, and ultimately the appreciation that, thank God somebody was telling us what was going on, because everybody felt like they were sort of in a vacuum. So those are two things. And the last, as it relates to ethics, is as the federal government stepped up their efforts to assist families in this, they passed the FFCRA and the e-sick time laws. There was a lot of confusion between DECCO's existing policies with our guaranteed 40s and our, we call it DECCO benefit. You had to take time off, just take time off, go deal with what you had to deal with. You were going to get 40 hours. Quickly, the federal government, they kicked in with those two, with the e-sick time and the FFCRA, and there was a lot of confusion about, well, when does one end and when does the other kick in, and what are the specifics of those laws? So we provided Skype training for all the family members that they wanted to jump on. There's informational sessions. As best as we understood those laws and the information we had available to us, we were sharing that by way of Skype, and really for family members, so that they knew if they had questions, we answered them the best we could. So I guess I went from Blanchard to Covey to my father to Gandhi. And this is another quote we've used in the past, and we've got this actually in some signage around DECCO, because it really puts a point to what we're talking about, the topic of core values in action, and how you apply core values when the going gets tough. And this one I do want to read. It's the action. It's not the fruit of the action that's important. You have to do the right thing. It may not be in your power, may not be in your time, that there will be any fruit, but that doesn't mean you stop doing the right thing. You may never know what results come from your action, but if you do nothing, there'll be no results. So that's kind of, if you took our 4 core values, soon to be 5 core values, include servant leadership, that's the heart of it. We expect our people just to do the right thing. And sometimes it drives our partner services department crazy. Deb Broder, who's the manager of that department, will come and say, well, wait a minute, what about this? And why is he off? Because for different reasons. And, at the time, as I explained to Deb, I said, it's just the right thing to do right now, because that partner's dealing with something that we don't have policies for. So we're just going to do the right thing. We're going to get to the end of this, and we're going to see how we made out. So I guess I'll just kind of recap that. So if you're going to develop your core values, make sure there's introspection. It's not just what are 4 cool words, 3 cool words that we can hang on the lobby and people will know we're a serious company. Really look inside your organization. How do people currently behave? It's not a right or wrong answer. It is what it is. The last piece of that is, what do you aspire to be? And are those two things aligned? Are you doing what you say you're going to do now? And do the core values speak to that? The servant leadership piece is going to be our 5th core value. We expect all of our leaders to lead with a servant's heart and employ empathic listening. Empathic listening certainly got challenged over the last 4 months, as I just mentioned in interaction with Deb Broder. We're doing the best we can. We have policies that are set up, but Joe has a sick grandmother who's home and needs to be home with that person right now. And we're going to let Joe know that when this is over, we understand the situation. When this is over, you got a spot. Get to work when you can. Let us know when you can. Communicate. So Robert Greenleaf Institute provides training. We do this as part of our DECCO University servant leadership. And I would encourage everybody to buy the essay by Robert Greenleaf, which is Leader as a Servant. And then as you start to test how you're doing as an organization, I would, go back to the 4 quadrants. And what kind of people, not only are the people you're retaining within your organization, because that'll tell you a lot about your core values, it's what kind of people are you attracting to your organization, and are you developing people? Again, quadrant 1 is where you want everybody. The people that get it and they're high performers. Quadrant 2 are the people that get it that really need some development. Quadrant 3, if you're hanging on to those people, you've got to ask yourself, are your core values in alignment with what you want them to be? Because these are very high performers and they're very challenging to move out of an organization because they are so good at their job. But if they don't get it and they don't get the core values, ultimately they're doing more damage than they are doing well. Quadrant 4 is obviously the easiest. because those are people that just don't get it and they're not performing anyway. So those are the easiest ones. So I'll end sort of with the words that have been hanging in my head for a long time as we work through this process. Well, a long time, for 50 years, but for a long time in the last 3 to 4 months as we work through this process. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. You know, we knew in early March we were heading into something that we didn't know what the other side looked like. So we could shut down shop, just send everybody home, but that'd be too easy. So we knew the going was going to get tough, and it was time for us to get going. So I will end it there, Anastasia, and take any more questions that people might have.
It doesn't look like we have any questions in the queue, but I am curious, just going back to discussing COVID-19. You know, I know for Massachusetts, it's different for every state. Phase 2 has opened up, and as things open up across the nation, are you finding that your employees, even though you've set up certain protocols so it is safe and for folks to come back, are you finding that there's fear or more excitement that they're excited to come? Because I know that there's an element of being social, you know, that that people miss, even though a lot of people like working from home. Are you finding that they're eager to come back into the office?
Yeah, I was going to do a two-part answer. So the office-based people, because we're seeing more and more as they come. As I said, we never shut the office down where people couldn't come here. We always left it where you don't have to come here. You can work from home. They have the tools and equipment to do that. Go ahead and do that. If you need to come into Brookline, it was open. I continue to work here in Brookline. It was open so people could come in, and probably 50% of our office-based crew work from home.
Got it.
I would say of that 50%, half of that is very excited to get back and they can't wait. They have a new relationship with their families that they're ready to get back to work. And the other half, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen a lot of positives, and they're being very effective working from home. And I think that the elimination of distraction from the day-to-day sort of office-to-office interactions is, you know, certain people have taken advantage of it, and they're doing very well. It puts some pressure on our managers because, you know, they need to make sure people are being effective in the job ultimately. But if they're effective and they're working from home, that works for us. So we're quickly now starting to analyze, well, what does an office life look like a year from now? So I think there's some elements of this that we're going to want to keep in place, and there's some other parts we're going to want to tweak and change. But again, we'll make those decisions based on what's right for everybody, and obviously in accordance with our core values. As for the field crews, there's excitement. People now for a while have been anxious to get back to normal. And I think, as I talked about early on, there was a lot of fear, trepidation. What is this thing? Why am I out? And do I need a special pass to even be on the highway and all those things? And those are all well-grounded. But as we work through this, and, you know, certainly in some of the results we've seen, people are excited, but people are mad. A lot of, and I'll speak only for DECCO, people are angry in the fact that all this is just some of the reactions happened, you know, between the states and the cities. And, you know, you tell me I can't even go play baseball with my son on a field, and yet I can go to Walmart and stand in line 50 deep. So, you know, there's a lot of, the reactions have gone across the board. It's had a great sort of galvanizing effect on DECCO in particular. They, you know, we use the term DECCO Rangers as a, you know, sort of the group of people that have gotten us through over the years. As a mirror shop contractor, we've been targets of organizing campaigns, and it's gotten ugly. And we went through an organizing campaign in 2014, and what a great positive effect that had on us as an organization. I can't thank the unions enough for trying to organize us. Because it had such a galvanizing effect. This has had the same sort of effect with people now that have worked through this, and they've said, you know, they remember, you know, kind of how they were treated and how they were free to do what they needed to do when they needed us most, and it's had a great effect. So it's a blend between excited and angry and kind of relieved a little bit now because, as I said, knock on wood, we haven't had to deal with any infections.
There's another question that popped up that I think might be a little tricky to answer. It says, is the new normal now fully in place, and how long do you expect it to last? Is it until there's an effective vaccine?
I wish I knew that. I think, yeah, we're fortunate. We work heavily in the biopharm world, so we are actively engaged right now in working on vaccines for some of our key clients. So who knows when that's going to be? I think they're talking fall or winter, all those things. I would say the new normal is in place now in the sense that it's never going to be what it was. It's going to be something else. And the positives that have come out of this, which are things like the social distancing and they're working remotely and the things laid out in our control manual, I'm not sure our job sites will ever get back to what they were, say, the end of February to what they are now, because what we've seen is, some of these impacts have had a positive effect. So if this is the new normal, we're good with that. We've gotten to a place where we can work in this world. It'd be better to know, kind of firmly what the state and federal government, what their plans are in terms of what they allow people to do. But that's out of our control anyway. We want to stay in our circle of influence. So, we do that, and we'll deal with those things as we need to.
Yeah. Okay. Were you able to get any of your customers to provide financial support for COVID-related inefficiencies or DECCO implemented benefits?
Not directly, no. We were able to, as I mentioned, we went to a second shift, and we knew that was going to have a negative impact on our CM and GC clients because they needed supervision on a second shift as well, and that's not something they were accounting for. The premium time that we had to pay our people to work on a second shift, we did not pass that along. To say we didn't get any relief, we didn't try. So I don't want to be critical of them. I would just say we didn't even ask because we were operating in a prism that was going so quick that we just did it, and we didn't ask for it. It wasn't the positive impacts far outweighed the cost impact, so we didn't ask the question. So I can't say we didn't get it, but I could say is that we didn't ask for it. So.
Right. There's another question. Do you think that age factors into who returns, and if so, do you think there's a potential issue with ageism or a selection process that may be unfair?
Yeah, I think, it's been interesting early on in this process because people were out searching for answers left and right. So what should we, could we, can we do kind of thing. And even early on, for the attorneys that are on this call, early on, attorneys were lining up. And I know, our corporate attorneys were saying this is going to be such an HR nightmare as we get through this, just because of things not related to age, but just who can work, who wants to work, who should work, who should not be working, who are you not going to let work, those sort of things. So is it a risk? Absolutely, because I think, as we move to where, hindsight's 2020, but as we move to a world where quarantining the healthy to protect the sick probably isn't the best approach. You want to quarantine the sick to protect the healthy is a better approach. So you're going to get the target audience is going to move into the quarantine world. And I don't know what those impacts will be. I do know the risk is there that people have pre-existing conditions that should not be out and about or working normally. It's something we'll have to deal with. But absolutely, the risk is there.
It's time for odd man out. So it's a game we play each week. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to name 4 different core values that are important for any company to embrace. And your job is to choose which one is the odd man out. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The desire to build long-term relationships, the need to treat others with respect and to appreciate their time, placing emphasis on fashionable clothing, including accessories like belts and shoes. A healthy work-life balance, which includes adequate vacation and recovery time. Which one is the odd man out?
I'd like to say that one's tricky, but it really isn't. I'm going to go with the style choices.
That's right. Placing emphasis on fashionable clothing is not a core value. And if it is, I would suggest that someone reassess their core values.
I agree.
Special thanks to you, Kyle, again for coming on, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you, Anastasia.
All right, take care.